Hello, and welcome back to Black Girl Magic Book Chat, Women's History Month edition. My name is Larissa McNeil, and I'm the African American Resource Center Coordinator, and I am celebrating Women's History Month by reading books by and about Black women and chatting with you all about them. This week, I read Token by Beverly Kendall. This is the book. I definitely chose it for its cover and its name. I judge books by their covers, and that was incredible. And so I picked it up and read it. So here we go. This book follows Kennedy. Kennedy is a Columbia University graduate who is working as a temp receptionist at a clothing company. Right? So she was laid off from her previous employer in marketing, and now she's working as a temp receptionist. One day, her employers call her into their office, and they say, "Hey, we will give you $10,000 to sit in a room with us while we conduct this meeting." Why? Because this meeting is important. This meeting is with this global phenom called Sahara. I don't actually know how do you pronounce that? Anyway, this global phenom named Sahara, and Sahara is a Black woman, kind of like in the vein of a Beyonce, if you will. She's an artist. She's a musician. She's like super famous. She's got her followers. She acts also. She's got this clothing line, and she's coming to this meeting because she's wanting to find a company to distribute her new clothing line. The company that Kennedy is working at right now found out that at her previous employers, Sahara walked into the room, saw that there was no diversity in that space, and walked right back out. So the people at her company, at Kennedy's company, they say, "Hey, we'll offer you this money to sit here because we need to have this meeting, because we need to get this account, and we need her to think that we are a diverse company. So if we put our token Black woman into this room, she'll be more likely to listen to us and to sign with us." It works. But what happens is Kennedy, she thinks about, okay, maybe I can do something more than pretending to be an executive in a company. Maybe I can create my own company, and I can help these companies by focusing on how do you diversify a company. So that's what she does. And so then the story takes us 2 years later. She's deep into this new endeavor. She's got this business that she is doing with her friend Aurora, and things are going great. So this book follows Kennedy and her dealings with people in these companies, and quite frankly their reluctance to diversify, as well as some of their thoughts on women and people of color. I liked this book. What I liked most about it is the conversation that can come from it. It really brings to the forefront this idea of diversifying a company, what that even means and why it's important. It's a little bit wild to me that people in positions can surround themselves with folks who look exactly like them, who think exactly like them, and not think that there's anything wrong with that. And obviously when you're creating a company, you want to bring in people who are like-minded, who share your vision. But the reality is that's not going to always be someone who looks exactly like, or who looks like you. Now, I will name, obviously, that there is diversity within cultures, there is diversity within ethnicities, there's diversity within races, but I don't think that the diversity within these races, within ethnicities, is enough to showcase the diversity that we see within our world. I think our workplaces, I think our communities should obviously represent the people who are there. And she lives in New York, right? And so, New York is not a place full of one type of folk. New York is America's melting pot, if you will. And so, you would think that a company would want to make sure that they can showcase that diversity, because everybody wants to do business with other people who they understand and who understand them, at least on a surface level. And there is camaraderie in people who look like you, and you want to make sure that you are servicing everybody that you want to service, and in order to do that, you need to diversify. And so we talk a little bit about that in this book, because what we see is that, like, it's unfair that the only people who consistently get that that feeling of being in a space of community is white men, at least in corporate worlds, in the way that it's described in this book. And then when you get even deeper into what it means to diversify a company, we get a lot of this idea of, well, are they qualified? That conversation kind of digs in and it takes root. Are they qualified? As if women and people of color are just like applying for jobs they're not qualified for. Or like people, don't do that very often, right? I don't think. And we know that in our world, rarely are women and people of color just given chances, right? And so when we apply for roles, it's more often than not because we think that we are qualified to do that job. And in this book, there is an example of kind of this idea of, are they qualified or they're not qualified. One of the characters in the book, he's a white guy, and he talks a lot about like whether or not people are qualified for the jobs that they're applying for, particularly executive positions. So he's the CTO, Chief Technology Officer, I think, of this tech company. And we find out that his dealings with some of the people in his company are not up to par, right? He talks a lot about, so in this company there are 2 black people who are gunning for raises, not raises, promotions, but raises, promotions. And so when they're trying to get these promotions, they are told that they are not qualified for the position. And what we find out is that these so-called qualifications were changed so that they would appear as if they were not qualified. And the positions that these people had applied for were filled by people who were related to this man, and not only related, he also paid for one of them to gain one of the qualifications for the position that had not originally been part of the position that they fired or they did not promote someone else for. Let that sink in. But he felt so justified, right, in doing this because I guess he just felt like, the people being darker than him made them less. And so some of the stereotypes in this book do seem a little bit crazy because it's so hard to believe that people genuinely think this way. There's a conversation between 2 of Kennedy's previous employers that discuss how this Ivy League graduate made her way up on her back. That's what they say. And then they also spout some other stuff about black folks and welfare, the whole deal. And the entire time I'm sitting there wide-eyed reading like, what in the world? But that's the reality, right? These stereotypes are so ingrained in a lot of people that they are convinced that the only reason that women are succeeding, the only reason that black people, indigenous people, Asian people, Latin and Hispanic people are rising is because it's been given. They really think that it's kind of like that argument about affirmative action, right? Like we're just putting people in these spaces because they fit the bill. When no, people are working for these jobs. People are going to school. Kennedy went to Columbia as a graduate student. So she's not just like on her, she worked for her job. And the other positions that they name, people are highly qualified. People have gone to the same schools, but there will always be people who will say, oh, you only got into that school because they needed more black folks on the brochure. Oh, you only got that job because they needed more diversity. They're just trying to reach a diversity quota. And that's just not true. So, it really did bring up kind of what it means to be a diverse company. How do you diversify? Because that's also something that Kennedy has to grapple with. The way in which she goes about helping these companies diversify is not always on the up and up. And a lot of times they hire her just as a way to say, oh, we're we've hired somebody. You know the whole deal. A company gets into a scandal because they've done something racist and or sexist, and they say, oh, we're taking steps to rectify the situation. And Kennedy's company acts as that step. And we see how a lot of times it never moves beyond that step. And she has to grapple with, do I want to be the face of a company, part owner of a company who claims to be working toward diversification and like genuine diversification, but I'm not doing that. It's good. That, like, I really enjoyed that conversation because, and I guess in a sense, this library is a corporation. But I have not worked at a level where like I have kind of seen how that operates. So it did give me kind of an idea of how big corporations might operate. Despite the themes, the book is really easy to read. It's not like a difficult book to read. And there's some humor in it. There's some romance too. One scene gets spicy, just so you know. But nothing too crazy. And before I forget, since we're focusing on women, one of my favorite things about this book is the way that they portray the friendships between Kennedy and her women friends. I am a huge proponent of women friendships. Anybody who knows me knows that I love my women friends. They know that those friendships are very important to me, and I like that they portray Kennedy as having a network of women to converse with, to build with, to grow with, and I like that by itself. If nothing else, means you should read this book. Let me know your thoughts once you do read it. Next week, I'll be reading Red at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson. So I know I say I try to pull books that like don't get a lot of hype. This one did when it first came out, but I never read it. And I thought this would be a great time to read it and kind of talk about it again because I heard it was incredible. So I really want to explore the themes that made it incredible. So I'll see you all right here next week with my thoughts on Red at the Bone. Thanks for checking on Black Girl Magic Book Chat. I'll see y'all next week.